The state of Utah is the first state in America to ban the flying of LGBTQ plus flags in classrooms and in federal buildings. Lawmakers in Utah passed a policy that will restrict teachers from displaying any political flags in their classroom. This includes the pride flag, making schools a non-divisive area. Everyone is on the same page. This will begin on May 7th. If teachers and lawmakers choose to not abide by this law, they can be charged up to $500 daily.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be taking a look at how Utah became the first state to ban pride flags from all public and on all government property after Governor Spence Cox allowed a bill prohibiting display of the flags. It will go into effect May 7th. Mixed reactions have emerged from both black and white Americans. Let's take a look at these videos.
For flying those types of flags. The only flags that will be allowed to be flown in classrooms and in federal buildings is the United States of America flag, the state of Utah flag, Olympic flags, college and university flags, and military flags. One senator said, "The people who fought hard to remove religion and the American flag out of the classroom welcomed in the presence of different flags." 21 senators here in Utah voted to remove the flag, 8 senators voted to keep it, and the governor of Utah, Governor Cox, signed it into a bill. No longer can LGBTQ plus flags be flown in any classroom and in any federal building here in Utah.
Okay guys, so apparently Utah is the first state in the US to ban the pride flag and other sort of like politically charged flags in government buildings. So let's talk about that, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be brought up in many of my other political videos. So to give some context on what that means, what's not going to happen is that they're not banning the pride flag statewide, banning people in general from flying it individually on their houses, on their cars, etc., things like that. This law only abides to government-owned buildings, and that really just only includes flags. So I was reading that something that they were talking about was buildings in Salt Lake City were lighting up the building's rainbow to sort of like counteract that. So that's still allowed. I'm assuming also maybe posters or things like that, or signs. However, this really just isn't the scary boogeyman that everyone's promised I'm going to get after voting for Donald Trump. And I'll tell you why. So I've said this many times. The pride flag, or better known as the progressive flag, is the most ugliest flag I have ever seen. I still stand by that. At such odds with how a group of people known for having good taste throughout history and art, have the ugliest flag to represent them. How we allow it to be thrown on our community is beyond me. Another thing, that progressive flag has gone far beyond representing me as a gay American. I'll even go as far as to say that liberal Hollywood gays, your East LA lesbians, despite probably having different political beliefs than myself, I bet that flag doesn't even really represent them as well. You know who that flag represents nowadays? When people see that flag, they think of all the weirdo straight men pretending to be women to go into the women's restrooms, fetishize wearing women's clothes, and get off on that. Not to mention also the cringy non-binary people as well. Again, aka straight women who have no personality, who have no hobby other than just trying to inject themselves into the LGBT community by creating a fake identity and a fake sexuality to try to put themselves in there because they just want to feel special for something. Those are the people I think that flag represents when people see that nowadays. I don't believe anyone looks at that progressive flag and thinks someone like myself. They think someone like Jeffrey Marsh, and if you don't know who that is, you don't want to know who that is. And like I've also mentioned, if we didn't have such an ugly flag, I think people wouldn't be out to ban it, but because it's so atrocious looking and what it's come to represent nowadays, and especially in 2025, firmly believe that's why it's being banned. And also especially them not wanting it in schools because of how insane and how crazy that teachers and other people who work in schools want to implement their weirdo agendas and push their gender teachings on kids. And when I see that flag, that's exactly what I think of, and I think that's exactly what a lot of other people think of too. Like I said the last time, y'all should have just left the kids alone. You should have just left them the hell alone. But no. And now here we are. So am I mad about Utah being the first state to ban the pride flag? No, I'm not upset about that. I don't really care, if I'm being honest. The only flag that I believe that needs to represent all of us is the American flag. So yeah, that's my take on the whole progressive flag being banned in Utah. I'm pretty sure other states are going to follow too after seeing this example. So yes.
Here's another first for Utah. They're now the first state to ban pride flags in classrooms and on government property. On Thursday evening, about an hour before the deadline for him to take final action on bills passed in the 2025 legislature, Governor Spencer Cox allowed HB 77 to go into law without his signature. This bill from Representative Trevor Lee only allows flags on a specific list to be displayed in classrooms and at government buildings. Governor Spencer Cox said that there are a lot of problems with this legislation and that he's disappointed in the final version of the bill. He's letting it become law without his signature because he's confident that his veto would have been overridden. And that looks like he's trying to have it both ways on this issue. He says that he doesn't support the bill. There's lots of problems with it in his opinion, but he's not going to veto it because that veto would be overridden. Here's what I think is really happening. He does not want to shine an even bigger spotlight on Utah for this issue. If he had vetoed this legislation, it would have forced lawmakers to come back into a veto override session to vote to override that veto. Can you imagine the amount of media attention that would put on the state? Lawmakers coming back to the Capitol for a veto override session to vote to overturn what the governor had done and affirmatively once again say, yes, we do not want pride flags to be displayed in classrooms and government buildings. Also, if he were to veto it, this would hurt Governor Spencer Cox's newfound MAGA cred. If you remember last year in August, Governor Cox went full MAGA after years of opposing President Donald Trump, tut-tutting him, saying he didn't support him. He didn't vote for him in 2020. He didn't vote for him in 2016. And then all of a sudden he endorsed Trump, does a 180, and now he's full MAGA. If he were to veto this bill, the amount of fury directed towards him from right-wing media would have been unbelievable. And he just didn't want any of that smoke. He did not want any of that heat coming his way. I think he believes this allows him to have it both ways, where he says, I don't support this bill, there's a lot of problems with it, but I'm not going to veto it because the legislature would just override that veto anyway. That's what I think happened here. Hardly a profile in courage.
In case you haven't heard yet, Utah has become the first state to ban the rainbow flag from schools and government buildings. The awesome person who made this decision was Governor Cox, and I have a question for you, Governor Cox. While this was happening and going on, you made a statement that how would you guys feel if we hung MAGA flags in schools and government buildings? You said this. So my research says. My question to you is, how do you compare a flag that represents welcoming, safety, unity for those of us who do matter in this community? How do you compare that to a MAGA flag that represents nothing but the complete opposite in hate? Where's the comparison?
Utah has become the first state to ban LGBTQ pride flags in government buildings and schools. This move also bans political flags such as President Donald Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again" flags. The ban will go into effect starting May 7th, when state or local government buildings will be fined $500 a day for displaying any flag other than the American flag, the Utah state flag, or military flags. Fox News reported that the governor highlighted that the law, since it narrowly focuses on flags, does not ban other political displays such as posters or lighting. Salt Lake City typically honors Pride Month each June by displaying flags that celebrate its LGBTQ population. Since the bill was sent to the governor's desk, Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County have illuminated the city and county buildings with rainbow lights each night to protest the legislation.
Having viewed the above videos, we take into conclusion citizens of Utah State in the USA strongly disagree with the bill, and in most cases, most of the citizens pledge to display the flags privately in their offices, homes, and private property. Was this a bold move by Governor Cox? Leave a comment and let me know what you think about this legislation. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, America.